We're Open Biome. We're a not-for-profit stool bank based out of Boston, and we provide stools for fecal microbial transplant to patients across the US and actually across 7 other countries. We've provided treatments to over 18,000 patients, to over 700 hospitals, and what we were doing today is looking at whether the donor matters for clinical effectiveness in recurrent C. difficile infection. So whilst we've done a lot of work on our donor screening for safety, ruling out both infectious and non-infectious diseases, we want to examine whether there was any impact on the effectiveness according to which donor you used. So in this study we pulled data on 1,999 patients who had FMT for recurrent C. difficile infection, and looking at clinical outcome at 8 weeks. And we observed an 83.9% clinical cure rate amongst patients who had been treated. There were 28 donors that were used all in all across all of these patients, and we found that there was no significant difference between donors in terms of the clinical outcome for recurrent C. difficile infection. The 3 kind of randomized controlled trials in fecal transplant for C. difficile have shown kind of broadly an efficacy rate of around 84 to 90%, one study showing 81%. So broadly speaking, the real-world data that we presented is in keeping with the clinical trial data. So there's some evidence to suggest that in inflammatory bowel disease, the donor really matters. There was a study by Paul Moetti and colleagues that showed ulcerative colitis that 1 donor amongst 6 had such a significant effect on the clinical trial that turned it into a positive one. So no one has actually really looked at this in C. difficile, and we decided to look back at our data and say, is this occurring in C. difficile? Broadly speaking, it seems like the efficacy rate is the same amongst all of our donors. Probably as well, as you kind of hint to, our screening process is very rigorous, so only 2.8% of donors pass, and we may be selecting for a fairly narrow spectrum of the population, and actually the stool that we're distributing is fairly similar in composition. We're looking into that and hope to be publishing and presenting that soon. So, in conclusion, the donor doesn't matter, it seems, when it comes to fecal microbial transplant for recurrent C. difficile infection. In terms of next steps, we'd love to see more standardized clinical trials and clinical follow-up. So we're very excited by the FMT registry that both the AGA and IDSA are working on to follow up 4,000 patients for 10 years, and we'll be working closely with them to provide material and really get some good, robust clinical data going forward.